Alrighty, we're going live again for a little bit, and I really want to talk a little bit about kind of details, and want to talk a little bit about rendering just a bit of the face of certain, anything really, anything you do, whether it be a creature, whether it be a monster, whether it be, like a character that you like. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about rendering the face of even creatures. This applies to like anything. So I'm just going to talk a little bit, and we're going to go into it right now. So there's a page I did before in my sketchbook, and a lot of this stuff is really just made for just kind of myself, right? Sketchbook pages, like I said, are different than other kinds of pages. Sketchbook pages are really there for just kind of fleshing out ideas and or pure enjoyment. And for me personally, that's pretty much what it is. Like, I'm pretty much here just for pure enjoyment. So if I kind of look at this right here, the first thing that stands out as far as like continuing to work on something would be probably making sense of the shapes, because there's like a lot of lines going on, like in the teeth and the face and all that. A lot of lines. And in some ways, I could leave it as is, but I really want to kind of push into it a little bit more and kind of work on it. So I would say we can dig right into the eyes. So let's maybe bring a little bit more focus into the eyes by putting some shadow pattern around the eyes in general. Maybe something like this, right? Just anything to bring attention, a darker shape. Sorry about the shadow of my hand, by the way. It's kind of just sticking there. But mainly around this area, I want like the more focus, right? Because then it captures the attention of whoever's looking right off the bat. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I know where to go now, right? Because like, believe it or not, like when you're kind of doing this stuff, you're really doing it because, you want somebody to look at it, right? I mean, that's not always true, but like in general, you're doing these things so that they're kind of an enjoyable trip for someone else. So like I always tell people to do this trick. If you're thinking like, oh, what is someone else going to enjoy? That might be kind of it may be good in a bad mindset, to be honest, but I think sometimes people get caught up in that mindset. What you should do also is, it's like, if you're drawing stuff that you like yourself, right? If that's what you enjoy, then chances are other people will enjoy that, right? You're doing it like you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense, because you get a better read. Let me put some more dark over here. You get a better read on doing stuff when you're like, I really, really like this, or this would be cool. I don't remember what artist told me this, so this is somebody else's advice. You want to think of stuff like, oh, like the sentence he was brought up was, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, right? Oh, wouldn't it be cool if, right, this monster had, these little tentacle guys around, or had them all over him, like they're living off him, right? Like big fish, little fish or something, right? Like, wouldn't it be cool if, and then that's kind of how that's what he would use to springboard his ideas for, I think he was doing like concept art, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, right? If you think about it like that, you're thinking about like, you're already tapping into what you like what your idea, you're like, oh, wouldn't this be a neat idea if this happened, right? And then after that, you kind of have to execute it, which is a whole other thing. And sometimes that can stop you too, right? So that's why it's important to know your basics of drawing. Okay, hold on, let's go over here. So I'm putting more focus over here by throwing these little directional lines, and I'm working at a smaller scale because it's actually like just the head of like a larger image. So I try to make it look like he's got 2 rows of teeth, but it's really hard for it to read right now. So I'm going to try to like be careful and throw... Dang, good thing my eyesight is so decent, because trying to throw a little bit of a thicker, whoopsie daisy. Dang, see, that's kind of hard. Little bit of a thicker line over on the first row of teeth. Right here, like his first row of teeth. Like he has some teeth in the front, and he has another row of teeth behind that. All right. Something like that. All right. Something like that. Right now, it's like I have to be really careful, because I'm just like because it's such a small area. Any little area is Yeah, any little area is gonna be really like, if I mess up, it's just gonna be a huge mess up, right? Because 'Cause we're dealing in really small stuff for the most part. Um, so, okay, we're working over here in the eyes. I don't wanna give him pupils. I just think it looks cool without it. I've always liked that look where they have nothing in the eye, but sometimes people go like, "Yo, where how are they looking and stuff?" But I'm gonna keep it like that. I'm gonna put a little more dark over here around the edges. Again, we're kinda working this area out. Um, I was actually talking a little bit about something earlier. Was you're kind of working. So like when you think of cool ideas, you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Wouldn't it be cool if he had this, or wouldn't it be cool if he has that? Right? I think when you don't learn the basics, sometimes that can make you. And I used to feel this way. Sometimes that can make you feel like, oh God, that's so much work to do. you know, if you're like, oh, what if he has like a mechanized thing in his head, built into his head? Like, what would that be? Would it be something that, maybe improves his vision or something like that? What would that be? And what I used to think was like, oh man, now I have to learn tech. Like now I have to look stuff up about tech, right? You want to get to a place where you know most, at least a bare minimum of all the basics. So you maybe know a little bit of tech, just a little, just enough, right, to carry yourself. Um, where that won't feel like this insanely hard task. Because I definitely been there. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he had this? I was like, oh God, I have to look that up now. Dang. So that's why I always tell people the importance of learning your basics, because that can happen with anything, right? That can happen with like anatomy. Like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if his head was turned up or something? I don't know. And then you're like, oh no, I don't draw heads turned up. Now I have to go figure out how to do that. I have to learn how to draw the head coming from the bottom, looking upward. How does that look like? Now I have to go get reference and right. You always want to have that built in, like, oh, okay, I already kind of know how to draw a head aiming upward. I have a good idea. Maybe I can get a reference, but it's not going to be this arduous, like long journey about teaching myself something I don't know, right? It's going to be more like, all right, I kind of know how to do that. Let me see what I can do, right? It's gonna be more like that, and you're gonna get excitement from carrying out a project. Okay, I'm looking at this eye over here. This guy needs a little bit more darkness right there in that area. Let me put a little bit more. I just need something going on here. He's got these big kind of bumps, these brows over his eyes. I just need something more going on. Maybe I can throw like a real dark area here on the pit of his eye. That's almost always an easy way to put stuff, is to go into the pit of like an area, right? The pit of the eyes or the pit of the mouth, and really pull that out. Let's see, line over here, line over here, line over here. Let's put that over here in this area. Pretty good. Pretty good. So what else are we talking about? Yeah, so and also, by the way, I didn't talk about this. When you're working on stuff in your sketchbook, and you're really trying to get stuff correct, or like, basically you can always experiment with stuff because it's so low risk, right? So if you're experimenting on something in your sketchbook, and if like, let's just say I totally blow this drawing and I'm like, man, I hate this, right? And I totally screwed up. I'm always like, well, okay, that was in my sketchbook. It wasn't for a client, right? It wasn't for, like a comic or something. It's just like, okay, it's a bad page in my sketchbook. And I'll probably just chop that page out, right? Or you can leave it in there, I guess. I mean, it's up to you. For me, if I really screw up a page, I would debate. It's honestly, just to say this, like, it's rare I tear a page out of my sketchbook. It'd have to be really, like, it would have to be a monumental screw up for me to actually tear a page out of my sketchbook. But it has happened. I've definitely done it. You know where it's more common? I have one of those sketchbooks where you can paint in. You know what I'm talking about? Like the really thick papered ones. And there's definitely a lot of pages I've torn into that. I'm actually probably going to do that one time here, bring it here, because I want to get back into painting. And I used to gouache paint a lot. Gouache paint's like a mixture of watercolor and kind of like a mixture of watercolor and like acrylic. But I want to get back into that. Anyways, back into this guy. So I'm looking at him right now, going okay. These spikes up here are fine. I tried to model them, kind of in a hair shape. I think they look too much like bananas, so I'm gonna try to put, like, some scratches or something on them. Gotta do something. They look too preliminary, right? But I also don't want them to bring too much focus, so I'm not gonna focus in on them too much. Okay, right here. His mouth is right there. But yeah, sorry, back to the point. I'm meandering around. But when you're drawing any kind of face, right? I would say most of the how do you say this? Most of the being careful parts, most of the particulars, most of the care in drawing should be around the face because that's almost always going to be the entry to the soul, right? You're always going to be looking at the face, whether it be a monster or a character or anything else. There's always that particular care that you want. So I kind of darkened this. What did I darken here? Yeah, and I'm drawing little bumps over here. I'm always kind of throwing in a lot of little extras, but we just do this, and it's interesting how you can kind of meander off in your own world, right? Like I was kind of doing it myself right now in live, right? You can always kind of meander off and go, okay, cool, and just kind of like get stuck in all the details, and it starts to become really, really fun in a different way. Because I think for me, I kind of tend to have fun in two main ways. One would be lost in the details like this, like rendering stuff, or just kind of uh, and then the other one would be lost in the initial design, where you're kind of like, oh, okay, I'm thinking about this, and you're thinking about this, and that can be fun in itself, right? And so you're trying to get to a point where both the actual construction of it, both the design part and the rendering part, are both, if not equal, close to as fun as the other. Because I definitely know a lot of artists where they get more of a kick out of designing than they do shading. And then I know a lot of other artists that it's like the reverse. They're like, all right, can we get to the shading already? Come on, let's get to the shading. Come on, let's get to the detail. Come on. Like, oh, there's this old adage, right? You can make even a bad design look great if you shade it correctly. Um, I don't know if that can kind of be true. Don't get me wrong. It can kind of be true. I've definitely seen some very nicely shaded stuff that I thought the design was terrible on. And yeah, that can definitely help. But I would say like lean into both. Lean into both, the actual shaded portion of it, and then the actual I'm sorry, lead into the design and then the craftsmanship of it, right? You don't even have to shade that much if the design is pretty good, depending on what you're working with, right? I think a few artists I know will come up with these amazing designs, and they're really just kind of more or less just art, right? Art. They're more or less just like line art, right? And they don't really shade that much. I think with the age of like all this AI stuff, and I think that's really starting to get people to consider ideas and design a lot more now, because I guess you could just like go on something and render it out really quick. Although it is over rendered in a lot of cases, and I know there's definitely issues with it, but you know what I mean. In this age, we really have to pay attention to ideas more and how to execute them. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Like this octopus dude on his shoulder. I feel like that guy needs a little bit more. But I'm not really going to go into that. I'm just going to make a few mental notes here, like throwing these lines over here. And then I'll probably shade them in on my own time, or maybe on a different live. Okay, let's zoom out. Let's zoom out a little bit. Come on. Wait, zoom out. Zoom out. So my idea was basically this monster maybe came out from the ocean, and he's covered in these. And I've kind of done this. I've kind of worked on this guy live once. Maybe he came out of the ocean, and like his face is pretty rendered. I would say I need to probably bring that level of rendering a little bit around here more. But yeah, my idea was essentially that like this creature lives in the ocean, came out covered in these octopi. I don't know what the plural is. I think it's octopi, right? And maybe they're his friends or something like that, or his pets or his little minions or whatever. But I think more what I think is like, okay, well, he just kind of lives in there with maybe not minions, right? But he just kind of lives in the sea. And he came out and he's covered in these things. So that's like the loose idea, right? It doesn't have to be like a strong story, because this is just a sketchbook image. right? But that's kind of like what I'm working with. Sorry, did I put some? Okay, sorry, it gets kind of blurry when I do that. Okay, yeah, forgive me. I'll try to just sketch on this side for a little bit. But yeah, so pay attention to your ideas. That's the most important thing. And yeah, really follow through and do what you want to do, etc. I'm working right now, as far as just one last thing. I'm working on a drawing program, like a big one that I'm going to try to put out, just like to learn all the basics and how to kind of give other people the ability to draw stuff from their head, because I think that's probably the coolest thing you can ever have, is just kind of going, oh, cool, I can draw that idea. Like that is like an amazing gift. I see myself as being able to do that now, but like, there's still stuff I struggle with. But, in general, though, I'm like, oh, cool. Like I can figure that out. And that's kind of where I'm at. But that's kind of where everybody wants to be, I think. And when you have it, it just feels really good to have it, I think. And I think that might be a good place. I would say like a cool little check mark for people to achieve, I think. So anyways, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I just went live for a little bit. Thanks for talking to me, and I'll see you later. Boom. Sit easy.